Hi, this is Sue Jackson, and I'm here today with a tag video. This is a unique one. It is readers who secretly want to write tag. It was created by Marlicia's Meanderings, and I was tagged by Marlicia. So thank you, Marlicia. She's created an interesting tag about writing rather than reading, even if you're not a writer. And I also wanted to point out that Marlicia recently started weekly writing prompts on her channel. So if you are a writer or interested in writing or writing curious, check out her channel. So question 1, are you a reader who secretly or not so secretly wants to write? Well, I don't think it's any secret. I am a writer. I've worked full-time as a writer, full-time as much as I can, for the last 25 years since I left my job. And even before that, in my professional capacity, I did a lot of writing. Writing articles was one of my responsibilities for helping to promote our consulting and training business. I wrote a book. No, it did not hit the New York Times bestseller list. But this was what my area of expertise was in, environmental management systems and also quality management systems. So I wrote a lot of articles as part of my job. And going even further back, although my background is in chemical engineering and my degree is in chemical engineering, I did get, our college didn't have minors, but I got a concentration in technical communications. So I loved my English classes in high school just as much as I loved math and science. Writing has always been a part of my life. More recently, many of you know that I wrote a book, Finding a New Normal, Living Your Best Life with Chronic Illness, about living with chronic illness. So this one obviously was a lot more personal to me. I write a lot of articles and reviews and things like that. I'm not doing much writing this year. With all the travel, I decided to focus more on YouTube, but normally I am pitching article ideas and writing various kinds of things. A few years ago, I had an article in RV Magazine. This was one of my favorite projects I ever worked on. It was for their Life on the Road segment. Take a hike. Hitting the trails with children is sometimes challenging, but always fun. Plus, it gives kids a lifetime love of the outdoors. So this was fun because not only did I write the full-length article, but the photos are all mine as well. So that's my younger son up on top there, and there's my older son climbing up. So that was really fun. And I've done that with several travel articles. And that's what I would like to do more of, travel writing. But over the years, I've written all kinds of articles. For a year, I had an ongoing column in Vital magazine about books, obviously. Throughout my career, I've written a lot of book reviews, both for my own blog, but also professionally. I wrote reviews for Publishers Weekly, for Shelf Awareness. And when I was working with Shelf Awareness, I also wrote columns and author interviews for them. Really enjoyed that. Back in the day, I wrote loads of reviews for Family Fun magazine. There's one for books, but also for games and music. And my family and I just had a blast doing that. I also write essays. This one was featured in Your Teen magazine about the end of our family travel years. Bittersweet. And obviously I write about health and chronic illness these days as well. So that leads us to the second question. If you are, or even if you aren't, and you are only imagining, would you prefer to write fiction or nonfiction or both? I think it's quite clear from that I am a nonfiction writer. Novelists seem like magicians to me. I have a lot of writing experience. I've worked with lots of different editors. I've written my own books. And yet, I don't know, the novel still seems, fiction just seems mysterious to me. I don't know how authors do that. So yeah, I have never tried fiction. Maybe someday I will, but for now, I am mostly nonfiction, all nonfiction. Question 3, do you think reading helps or hinders your writing? Why or why not? Absolutely helps. There is nothing like reading good writing to help you become a better writer. I think it's the best thing a writer can do to improve their craft, is read good writing. Prompt 4, what genres of nonfiction would you choose to write? And she's got some examples: histories, social commentary, memoirs, science, biographies, something else. Why would you choose that genre? Well, I kind of covered that in what I have written. I write about family, I write about health, I write about chronic illness as a subset of health. Back in the day, I used to write about management systems, environmental inequality. I write about books and reading, and I write about travel and the outdoors. And as I said, I'd like to do more of that. Prompt 5, what fiction genres would you choose to write? Fantasy, mystery, historical fiction, science fiction, something else, or maybe a combination? I have no idea. Again, I don't even know how authors do that. Some of my favorite science fiction authors are up here: Justin Cronin, Hugh Howey, back there, Blake Crouch. I don't know how they make this stuff up. I think if I were going to try fiction, I would probably start with realistic fiction because it's closer to what I know, real life. I love reading all kinds of fiction. I just don't know how authors come up with all that. Prompt 6, who would you name as your influences in writing? Well, one amazing nonfiction writer who comes to mind is Laura Hillenbrand. And she writes completely different kind of nonfiction from me. I write about what I know. She writes unbelievable nonfiction about topics new to her and does this incredible research. Her research is so in-depth and her writing is so amazing. If this had been written by anyone else, I would not have read it. Horse racing? Zero interest. But she has this talent for taking all that in-depth research that she does and telling a story with it, an intriguing, engrossing story. Besides that, not a minor factor in her inspiring me, she has the same chronic illness I do. When she wrote Seabiscuit, and I've talked about this on my channel before because I'm just so impressed by it. She wrote much of Seabiscuit lying in bed with her eyes closed, with a pencil and a pad of paper. Because at the time she had vertigo so bad and orthostatic intolerance, which is a part of our disease, she couldn't sit up. She couldn't open her eyes or she'd get dizzy. So she's just an amazing person, very inspiring. Someone else I haven't read in a long, long time, but when my kids were young, I discovered Marion Winnick. And this may have been her first memoir, The Lunchbox Chronicles, but I've got like 3 or 4 of them upstairs. Notes from the Parenting Underground. So she writes memoir, basically, that is absolutely hilarious. And I do write memoir. As I mentioned, I write essays. Those are based on my own life. My chronic illness book is kind of half self-help, half memoir, because it's about our own experiences. And Marion is just an amazing writer. If you've never read her before, if you've got younger kids, check out this one. If you've got older kids, some of her later memoir essays would work for you. Just an outstanding author. And then specifically in terms of writing my chronic illness book, some of my inspirations were Katrina Byrne, who's actually a friend of Laura Hillenbrand. She wrote this book, very different from mine, although I've got one in progress that's like this. This is about the science behind these two diseases, research, treatments, things like that. But she also has some amazing chapters in here about patients and from the patient's perspective. Katrina was a huge inspiration for me. And this is an old book. I still have it, and it's still, all tabbed and everything because I referred to it often, especially in the early years of my illness. And a good friend of mine, Tony Bernard, she and I became sick at the same time in the same year. We've never met in person. She's out in California. I'm here on the East Coast. But we met through the blogging world and online and ended up becoming really good friends. And she wrote a series of books that are based on applying Buddhist principles to chronic illness. This was the first one, How to Be Sick. And she's an amazing writer, and she does such a good job. And I found her books just so fascinating. So another of my inspirations. Prompt 7. Do you think a person should stick to writing what you know? Or, especially in the case of speculative fiction, do you think a person can just make it all up as long as one stays consistent within the story? Well, obviously with fiction, some of my favorite fiction is all made up. Some obviously is autobiographical, but much of fiction is made up. And the authors who do that are amazing. But also even with nonfiction, good research, that's what Laura Hillenbrand does. She takes a topic she knows nothing about, but that sounds fascinating to her, and digs in deep with the research, and the result is amazing. So yeah, that's fine. I tend to write what I know, but other authors are very talented at doing the research and making stuff up. Prompt 8. Do you feel that profanity, graphic violence, and adult situations are overused in writing? No, not necessarily. I think everyone has their own taste. And that's great. That's what makes the world interesting. So I tend to avoid books that have really graphic violence. I find it disturbing. But I read plenty of books with violence in them. It's fall right now, so I'm doing the RIP event, Readers Imbibing Peril, reading darker stuff for fall. And so I'm reading a lot of thrillers, and many of them are violent. Not my favorite thing to read about, but I'm okay with it. And sex and profanity don't bother me. I think sometimes a story calls for any of these elements. And if it's part of the story, then it should be a part of the storytelling. 9. Do you feel books should have warnings like movies do so readers know what to expect? Why or why not? Not really. I don't feel strongly about this in either direction. It's not something important to me. And finally, prompt 10 is tag others. So I tried to think of people who I know do some writing, but I'm not sure about some of these. So Marlisha's written it, so you can answer either way, even if you're not a writer. So Melinda at A Web of Stories. The name of her channel comes from the name of her blog, so I know Melinda does some writing. Mitzi Reads and Writes. It's right there in her channel name. Lori at Books, Ink, and Paper, and Kat's Novel Adventures. I don't know if you two do any writing, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on these questions. And I'm interested to hear from you. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on some of these questions, whether you're a writer or have aspirations to write, or whether you're just thinking about this in the abstract.